replace item 14 with FA. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other discussion? Call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, and now, I entertain a motion for approval of agenda items.
Board minutes, we just did agenda.
Well, but we need to vote on
Oh.
that one.
Got it,
Yeah.
sorry.
Okay? Entertain a motion for approval of agenda items as amended. Motion by Mr. Guadiana, second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Molina. Any questions? Call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moves us to item B. Entertain a motion for approval of February 14th board meeting minutes.
So moved. Cordova.
Motion by Mr. Cordova, second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Murillo. Any questions on the minutes? Call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Is Mr. Bash on now?
Yes, I'm here. Can you see and hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can hear you. Okay.
All right, thank you for the opportunity to address the board. Just a quick recap on the history. On February 14th, the board took formal action to approve the search proposal that we submitted. At that meeting, we also planned to host a planning meeting on February 21st, which occurred for 2 hours. And I've sent out a summary and then a revised summary based on feedback from some of you. Following that planning meeting, the president of the board visited with me regarding the search, and he was asking my perspective regarding candidate recruiting in light of some tensions among board members that have been part of media coverage for the district over really the last year. And so my response to him was that candidates do research school districts when they're considering application, and our recruiting discussions with prospective candidates usually include them asking us about three key areas of any school district. The first question they often ask has to do with the financial condition of the school district. The second topic they often want to ask about is the relationship the district has between its employee groups or unions and the district, history of collective bargaining, those kinds of things. And then the third category is board. And so they'll want to know, can you share with me the length of service of the board members, expectations they may have of the next superintendent that you've shared with us, and then how well the board works as a team. As I spoke with your board president, he reflected, and I actually called him back after that discussion because I did my own Google search just to see what I might find just as a candidate would. And I did find some coverage going back to last March, almost exactly a year ago, that did show in the local media, mainly the Silver City publication, some stories around board disputes. And while it's not unusual for board members to disagree from time to time, the fundamental question here, and this is why I wanted to address the board tonight, is will this impact our ability to recruit candidates for the leadership vacancy? And the answer to that is yes, it will impact it, but I have no way of quantifying that for you. A more specific question would be, does this mean that we wouldn't recruit any candidates or that no candidates would apply? Not necessarily. So why are we bringing this up at all? Bringing this up because in good faith to you and your school district, there are certain pieces of the process, of course, we control, and that's part of what our expertise brings to you is a process and guiding that process, conducting major pieces of that process for you. And we're prepared to proceed and do that. However, we haven't signed a contract yet because I wanted to put this before the entire board before we proceed, knowing that you may or may not want to proceed knowing this particular challenge. And so the options on the table for you are to, proceed with the search, knowing that this is a reality and frankly, a challenge we'll face in the recruiting. If we do proceed, I see on the agenda tonight, there's a board retreat topic. And so perhaps the board is engaging in some work to address some of the differences. And if so, I really want to learn more about that so I can share that with prospective candidates if they ask, gosh, can you tell me more about the board and what's happening? Because there was also an election. And so I would be able to share that, based on an election, the board now is taking a look at some board development work, if that's what that retreat might be about. So that's an option. And in that case, you wouldn't need to take any action this evening. We just carry on. Although you do see it on the action item list, because if you did decide to delay the search, it affords you more time to engage in board development work if you wished to consider that option. Outside of that, I just want to make very clear that it's not my goal at all to steer you one direction or another. We just feel as a company that we owe it to you and your school district to be very transparent about this particular challenge as we enter the search phase, because as soon as we advertise the position, we immediately launch into recruiting. And so I want to be prepared if we do proceed with some talking points that I could use with prospective candidates that you as a board are comfortable with. So with that, that's the question I have for you tonight. How would you like for us to proceed?
Any comment?
Mr. Bash, I would like clarification on the timeline that we agreed to on February 21st. It said that the
Yes.
position would be posted on the various websites late February 2022. So
That's
are you
correct.
telling me, because of this conversation that was had with our president, that there's been a week and a half delay?
Yes, yeah, we made the decision to delay because I didn't want a false start should the board decide they want to delay the search, for example. And so I'm ready to launch with that posting tomorrow if the board elects to proceed this evening. And I'm still confident we can complete the engagement activities you see on the calendar. So the advertisement would be delayed, but the recruiting and the engagement work would remain the same. We just adjust the dates.
I'd also like to chime in. The discussion with the president basically changed the direction that we had voted on. All of us here are aware of the circumstance, and I know this is new to you and of a fair consideration to you. But all of us are aware of the dynamics that happen here, and we still voted to go about that. None of that has changed, and I don't understand how we could reconsider anything unless there was an unexpected change. But certainly anybody speaking individually for the board about a concern and circumventing the action that has already been agreed is problematic. And I think there are opportunities, especially the way you've laid out things with individual discussion with board members, that will give you a full appraisal that you can work off of. But if we were to wait for certain things to be put in place, this would drag out, and we'd probably be going into the beginning of next year or somewhere where a new person will start up without their leadership being set up before the beginning of the year. So I am disappointed that we're revisiting this at this particular meeting, and I think there are some issues that should call for censure for taking this discussion to a point that makes it revisit in the next meeting. But I'm hoping that we just go forward with staying with what we were on the previous meeting and discussing these things with you and putting them in a light that I think people, if we wait 2 or 3 months, all this information is still going to be out there. Nothing's going to change. And it's good for somebody to take a look at that before they come to work. And I think it'll benefit them to see what they're stepping into instead of coming into a surprise that won't change, at least for the time being. I appreciate that you're the one that brought it up so that it would be a full board membership rather than an individual decision. And I think that shows a great deal of responsibility on your part and understanding of the roles of board members. So I'm grateful for this presentation you've made, and I hope we can go forward.
Mr. President, if I may I speak?
Yeah, go ahead.
In fairness to the president, I do want to clarify that it was me who reached out to the president as the designated liaison for the board, if you recall from our planning meeting. And so I did ask him how we should proceed, and it was him who indicated that this would have to come before the entire board. And so that's what brought me here tonight. In no way did the president attempt to make a decision on behalf of the board. It was his advice to me that we needed to address the entire board.
Mr. President, first of all, I want to thank you, Mr. Bash, for bringing this before the board and before telling us, because we are going into a chapter that we're going to spend quite a bit of money, and we're trying to get a good person to come in and work with our district, our kids, our education. And I thank our president for laying it out for you. You asked the question. He is the spokesman as per our agreement. And I think he has every right to come out and express what he just did. As for my concern is, yes, as a board, we do have problems. And I speak for myself. I wish that we would get those problems out in the open, clear it, and become a functioning board before we go out and spend this kind of money. So that is what I would suggest, that we put a hold on this thing for right now. But I'm just one board member. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Bash, so, you're the subject matter expert in regards to this. And just as Mr. Cordova said, we are, in good faith, it's much appreciated that you did come forward and ask those questions. In your, I should say, expert opinion, what is your take on this in regards to getting a qualified applicant pool, and what are our chances? Because I do see Mr. Cordova's point. However, I think kicking the can down the road is not going to solve a lot of issues. So, what, in your opinion, what are our chances in regards to getting a qualified applicant pool?
Well, it's a difficult question to answer. That's why I clarified earlier that, does it mean you'll get no candidates? No, I don't believe that would be the result. Are there some candidates who might steer clear because of what they find doing their own search? And that's really what I'm calling to your attention. So the chance of that is likely. That said, a proactive approach, and that's why I mentioned that earlier, to sort of getting out in front of the question that some candidates might ask, is what I would advise if the board decides to proceed. Because, again, I'll repeat it, it's not unusual for a board for 5 people to encounter disagreement from time to time. That's normal. How they navigate that disagreement with one another is really what candidates want to know about. Because as a superintendent, you really become a team of 6, not just 5. And so they want to know how well the team works with one another. And so what I've seen, and I have worked with boards before who've struggled with this, and if we develop a plan, and that again might be what your board retreat is aiming at, where I can say to candidates, look, this board is aware, and they have asked me to relay to you that they have a roadmap for resolving these differences and coming to an agreement on how they will respectfully and professionally navigate any future disagreements, because they want what's best, for the district, for the students, families, and staff of the school district. And I'm happy to work with you to develop those talking points. If we have that piece in place, then you give me a tool to use with prospective candidates. So it's not just what they find, it's the district's response and the board's response to what they find as they research. The flip side is what's been mentioned, and that is, we do charge a fee, and as soon as we sign that contract, we dive in and give you 100% effort, with all the search activities that we outlined in the planning meeting. And so that train leaves the station, so to speak. I hope that answers your question.
Mr. Bash, just to bring up, since you brought up the discussion of the board retreat, we are going to be talking about that under unfinished business. One of the things that I am going to recommend to the board, and we do have David Chavez who will be doing a presentation as far as a strategic plan, but the board retreat is all a part of it. And part of what I've talked with David about, if that's the direction that the board chooses to go, is to work on some team building with the board. So that is something very positive that we would work towards that could really help in this situation.
Mr. President? When I ran for this board, I ran knowing full well the work that would need to be put in. My passion for the students and families of this community pushed me to do that, make that choice. And we voted as a board to go ahead with this search. We had a meeting with Mr. Bash. He came down, laid out the plan. And I'm just curious as to why this has never been brought up before, why it was waited until after the meeting to be brought up. And, I've heard it said a few times, I am just one board member, and we need to work as a team. And I just feel that we had already made this decision. We were already moving forward. I've had candidates reach out to me, so there are candidates that are interested. They've asked about the position, why hasn't it been posted? And on the agenda today, we do have the opportunity for a board reorganization, which along with the retreat could also be a good faith gesture, having the board reorganized, that we are willing to start working together as a team and move forward for what's best for the students of this district.
Other questions? Well, thank you, Mr. Batch, for being here again. And I got one question. If we waited to sign the contract with you after our retreat, which I hope we can set it up here pretty soon, how far back would that put us?
Well, as Director Murillo mentioned, advertising is kind of a linchpin part of this process, and it doesn't take a lot of effort for me to advertise the position. And so I would say at this juncture, if we wait any longer, then it becomes difficult to honor the backside of the timeline we talked about. I can still accommodate the delay that we've had and stay on the decision timeline that we agreed to. If we wait much longer, I'm going to say if we wait any longer, we're going to need to adjust that. And so that's why, I planned to address the board, I think last week, and this meeting needed to be rescheduled, which I understand. But I was hopeful that, on that date, we could at least get this before you, ask if there was a need to reconsider the decision that has been made with timing in mind. So to answer your question, it becomes much more difficult if we wait any longer.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, it's an action item. Do you hear a motion? And please state your motion, what it's about.
I move that we honor. I move. Look at my slide, yeah. I move that we honor the original vote and, I'll stop. I move that we honor the original vote and take no action at this point, go forward with the contract as it was approved in the previous meeting, and going forward, making sure all discussions happen prior to votes.
You heard the motion, do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Guadiana, second by Ms. Murillo. Any other comments?
Would you restate the question, the motion? What was the motion on?
I vote that we honor we keep in place the action taken at the previous meeting, go forward with the contract, and keep all the discussions now ahead of such votes instead of reconsidering as we go along.
Okay, you heard the motion that it is for us to proceed with the contract that we had voted on at the previous meeting. Any other comments? Call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Aye. 2 opposed, 3 for. Thank you, Mr. Bash. And
Thank you. And if I may, I want to affirm Superintendent Barella and her assistant Irma. We did spend some time working on identification of contacts for the groups that the board asked us to schedule engagement time with. And so that will be among the next steps. And each of you as individual board members will be hearing from me very soon to schedule our individual interviews. And then, as was mentioned, the advertising, we will put that up starting tomorrow as quickly as we can. So I'll be connecting with Superintendent Barella, working on the website, but also sending the advertisement to the state outlets that I talked to you about during our planning meeting. So thank you for the time and for the consideration.
And John, those names that we've provided you, they're on the Google sheet, right? So you've had access to the most current information that we've put up there, correct?
I do.
Okay.
okay.
Yeah, and then
Go ahead.
I believe the contract is ready for signing too.
Yes.
Is that correct?
That's correct. It's sitting on my desk. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, that was my question, that when were we going to sign the contract? Okay,
We, just to clarify to the board, we had given John an original contract the day that you all had the work session, but he took it back to his people, made a few revisions, and that's basically why the contract was not signed. Now we're both in agreement with the contract, so we're ready to move forward with signatures.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Bash.
Thank you all. We'll see you soon, I'm sure.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Move to item D. Mr. Chavez?
Item D, we do have David Chavez from CES. In your packet was a proposal from CES for a strategic plan work. So David will give a presentation on what that might entail, what that might look like.
President Sepulveda, members of the board, thank you for this opportunity. I will go over the proposal that you have before you. The process that I like to follow in a strategic plan and development of a strategic plan, it takes 2 to 4 months to complete. It depends on how quickly we can get organized. If you wish to follow through with all of the steps that I've included here. So I'd like to start by going over what each step would entail. So the first thing that I like to do when I come into a community is work with the superintendent and you, the board, in identifying key members from your community that you would like to invite to participate in a community-wide needs assessment. And what the needs assessment would include would be ideas, brainstorming ideas from the community as to what needs to occur to improve education for the Cobre School District. So that process takes about 3 to 4 hours to complete. I recommend that it be done in an afternoon. Starting at 6, that allows people to get off of work, get a bite to eat, and then attend the meeting. The way that I structure that community meeting is I ask the superintendent and you as a board to identify key stakeholders within your community, and usually it's 7 subgroups that you will be identifying. Students, I'm not going to mention all 7, but I'll mention some of the 7 that you would invite. It would be students, your certified and non-certified staff, and those would be 2 separate groups, your administration, the Board of Education, your governance structure within the community, state legislators, congressional delegation from the region. Your clergy is always good to invite to those meetings. Your community leaders, your business people within the community is another group that I encourage to invite to attend. And I'm forgetting one last group, but there's a total of 7 that I recommend. Some communities make the decision to invite as many as 8. So they have a particular subgroup that they would like to get input from, and they ask for those individuals to be invited as well. And when I say invited, I actually develop a letter that is then modified by the district leadership that goes out to the community, and you identify the individuals that you want to intentionally invite to the meeting. These are your key stakeholders that you really want input from. And then because it is an open meeting, and that will be a work session for the board on that evening, because I would hope that all 5 of you would be able to attend. And you will participate like the others in the room. The individuals are brainstorming as a group as a whole. We then divide up into like groups, so students would be with students, parents with parents. And then we would go into mixed groups, where you'd have representation from all 7 groups at 7 or 8 different tables. So that's the process that I follow on the community needs assessment. I then put together a report that is then provided to you, the board, for your review. And what you'll come out of that meeting with will be the five highest prioritized needs that the community has identified for you. You'll actually come up with more than 5. You'll have probably around 30 that you will be, 30 that will be vetted. Some communities identify as many as 100, but you want to vet those down to a manageable number. So I suggest that you work on no more than 5 in any given year. That doesn't mean that you don't address the other needs. It means that as you address a need and you feel comfortable that you've addressed that need, the next highest need would then rise and you would begin working on it. So in my experience as a former superintendent, when we went through this process in a 3-year period, we'd probably address 15 of the highest priority needs that were identified by the community. Once that is done, then I would suggest to the board that you either go into a work session, about a 3 to 4 hour work session, or retreat for the purpose of looking at the needs. I would go over that report with you. But the purpose would be to revisit, if you have a vision statement, revisit your vision statement, your mission statement, and your core values. That is truly what you are about as a board and what you would then represent to the community. Once those are completed, the next piece of the work during that retreat would be to identify goals. And it's my recommendation that you identify 3 and no more than 5 goals so that they're manageable and that you can work on those over a period of a year. My suggestion is that you develop a 3-year plan. Some boards decide that they would like to go with a 5-year plan. The problem with a 5-year plan in New Mexico is the funding as you receive it from the state. It's difficult to plan in years 4 and 5 because you don't know what your funding is going to be in those out years. Once that is done, once you've identified the goals, the individuals you're going to task for implementation of those goals is going to be your leadership team. They're the ones that are going to be tasked and charged with implementation. Your search for a superintendent is timely in that when you develop I'll give you personal experience. When I was a superintendent, I've always worked off of a strategic plan. When I first started, I developed the plan. And in essence, it was my plan. It didn't belong to the board, didn't belong to the community, because I developed it. It was not as strong as if you, the board, engage the community to develop it. Then it becomes your plan. And when you recruit a person for the leadership position, it ought to be with the idea that you're going to want that person to implement and put that plan into effect for your community. So that ought to be one of the criteria that you would use by which to evaluate your superintendent. In my opinion, it's the largest criteria, the biggest criteria that you would use. Once the goals are developed, I would suggest that you turn the responsibility over to the leadership to develop action plans, strategies by which to address the action plans. What are the key evaluation criteria that you're going to use to assess whether progress is being made towards those action plans that are then going to be addressing your goals? And that is what you're going to hold your leadership team accountable to. Or did we make progress? And if we failed to make progress, what are the impediments that kept us from doing so? And then my suggestion to the board and to leadership is that you assess and evaluate progress towards those yearly goals on a quarterly basis, so that you're continually getting feedback over the course of the year as to how you're progressing towards accomplishing those goals. Once that is completed, once the work of the leadership team is completed, then I would suggest that you have another board retreat or a work session. And the purpose of that would be for you to review and for the leadership team to present to you here are the action plans that we've developed to address the 3 to 5 goals that you've identified. That then provides you with the opportunity to modify, change, add to, whatever those strategic action plans are. And then it truly then becomes your plan. You will have seen what the leadership developed. You either anoint that, give it its blessing, and move forward with the plan. You modify it to meet your particular needs, and then you move forward with the plan, and then you assess and evaluate it on a quarterly basis and then annually. Your stakeholders, if you choose to invite the community to a community meeting, part of that expectation is going to be feedback to them. So what I suggest is that you put your needs assessment data, and you'll have that by way of a report, on your website so that your community can then see, here's the goals that were identified, and here are the highest priority needs that were the outcome of that particular meeting. I also like to invite the community to 2 meetings a year. One is a mid-year report, and that can either occur in December or January. My suggestion is January. So you give them a status of what has happened from July through the end of December, where you're at relative to the action plans, what you as a board have decided that to give a status, either we're making great progress and here's how we're assessing that, or there's still some work done on some of those action plans, and here is what we're putting in place to address whatever shortcomings we might have. And then at the end, in June, I suggest another community meeting not for the sake of, you can seek input, it's just to inform them of what you as a board are doing. Because you're the elected officials, you're the ones that have been tasked and charged with putting that strategic plan into effect, but you're always looking to seek input from them initially, and then reporting back to them so that there's some accountability there. And once you get through with the work session, finalize the plan, we take that work, put it into a final document. We'll provide you with 3 documents. One will be the needs assessment. Once it's completed, you'll get a full report. You'll get a strategic plan, your working plan, and I will also provide you with a template that would allow for those quarterly updates. I will provide that template to your leadership, and then they can share it with you. You can modify it to meet your particular needs, and then that's what I would suggest that you use for quarterly updates. But I'll provide a template for that. And then the last thing that you will receive is, I'm assuming that at times you go out into the community to report and give updates on what's going on in education in Cobre, or even just putting it up on your website. It's good to have marketing material when you go out to do that. So I will put together a marketing brochure, if you would, that will speak to the elements and components, not the comprehensive plan, but elements and components within your plan that you can use as marketing material. Questions? I tried to be as brief as possible.
More of a statement. I think it is refreshing to hear a plan to coordinate and address things as a team. And I think that's really what's been lacking, and that I think is really a large part of the dysfunction. Having a strategic plan, as we've gone to I don't know how many sessions, is critical. And having meetings that show the progress towards that is something that the public would greatly appreciate. So I appreciate all that you put forward, and I look forward to participating in that.
President Sepulveda, Board Member Guadiana, thank you for that. And I think the other thing that does, it keeps the district on course, and it truly provides your superintendent, it doesn't provide him or her with a guessing game as to what the expectation is. It's written out for them. They have clear guidelines and accountability measures that you all are seeking feedback on. And it's not so overwhelming that it's overbearing on the individual, but it'll get you to where you need to be.
I think it's the absence of knowledge that is overbearing.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And I just want to appreciate the fact that community members are involved in the process. I think that's really important, to have buy-in from the community and just more transparency about what they want and what we're doing, and having these regular updates. I think that will be good for building relationships with our community. We're a small town, so I think that's a great idea.
Other comments? Well, thank you, Mr. Chavez, and we look forward to working with you. Joyce?
President Sepulveda, members of the board, thank you so much for giving me this time.
Mr. Chavez, before you leave the podium, could you talk a little bit just what CES would do? I know that board retreats are a big part of this strategic plan, as you've alluded to in your presentation. Can you talk about some of the other aspect that we've discussed, like as far as the team building and working with the board that CES could provide as well?
So there's a separate activity that comes with that some boards like to have included as a part of this. And Dr. Gloria Rendon, who some of you, if you've attended meetings, have probably heard her speak, and Evan Grasser, they're the ones that we provide to the School Board Association to do some professional development for the boards. They take a board through a 4 to 5 hour team building exercise. And what that does is it provides you, first of all, with how many of you are familiar with the Myers-Briggs? It's a type inventory. I used to administer that when I worked in the business sector. But this is a take flight. And I think it's far better than the Myers-Briggs because it gives you personally what your style is. By style, it means how do you like to receive information? How do you like to interact with others? So it gives you that perspective for you as an individual. And it's good, I think, when a board or an organization knows how, if I were on the board, how my particular style and how I like to receive information. And at times, I it may appear as if I'm standoffish. Well, that's just part of my style, and it's good for people to understand that. So that's part of what you get in the leadership, but it also takes you through some exercises that really at the end of the session, it provides you, I think, with a better understanding of here's how we need to function as a body of 5 so that we're unified, and that's the voice that we project when we're in meetings. We may have our disagreements, but this is the way in which we should handle those disagreements. So it gives you some tools, some resources by which you can do that. Not to say that you don't have those tools already or that skill set already, but it just further enhances that for you. So that's one thing that we bring to the table if you decide to go through that take flight training. Other elements, there's a timeline that I'm going to need to sit with Ms. Varela if you decide to engage in the strategic plan. And these will be dates that will be brought back to you to inform you of when these activities are going to be taking place. So that will be something that I will work with Superintendent Varela on. She will then share that information with you, and then you will decide when you would like to see certain activities take place within your community. The community needs assessment is critical to all of this, so it's important that we give that enough time to get the invitations out and then make sure that there's follow-up, even personal invites by phone to those individuals that you would want to see attend the meeting. Did I cover it, Ms. Barrera? Okay. Again, thank you, and my apologies for taking more time than maybe I should have.
No,
Yeah.
no. Thank you, Mr. Chavez, and you going back home tonight, or?
No, I'm spending the night. I like to build the economies within the communities when I come and visit. So I gassed up here in Cobre, and I'm staying in Silver City. I'll be flying out in the morning.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, and have a safe trip back home.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chavez. So,
Okay.
Mr. President, based on Mr. Chavez's presentation, I'd like to recommend that we move forward with CES and have them support our district in putting together a strategic plan.
You heard the recommendation. Do I hear a motion?
I'll move. This is Gilbert.
Motion by Mr. Uliano, second. No. The second by Mr. Molina. Any other questions?
I have a concern. I make the motion and I support the motion. I made the motion. I don't know.
Try number 2.
I'm going to swallow it if I keep doing it further. Not a good thing. Maybe both of them? Hey, one of them's working. No. Anyway, I made the motion. And I was very impressed with the presentation. But I need to voice that, again, we go down the road of the board not participating on how we're going to go forward with this. Just like we did with the original decision to make this, to do the search, and there was a selection made and brought in already ready for contract, and we're doing that again. But I think that the timeliness of this is essential. But again, it goes to the process that of inclusion of board members is being bypassed. And I would hope that at some point is remedied.
Well, at one point, I wish that we would all be able to work together. But anyway, we have a motion and a second. Any other comments? Call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Okay. Next
Item-
item on the agenda is use of facilities. I did verbally bring this to the board a couple of weeks ago, the last meeting, I believe it was. The Grant County Youth Basketball, I had given permission for them to go ahead and use the facilities because I didn't get the paperwork from them before the last meeting, so the paperwork is included in your board packet, so this would make it official for them to be able to use the facilities, which I think they're probably almost done with using the facilities, but I do recommend that we approve the use of facilities by the Grant County Youth Basketball.
You heard the recommendation. Do I hear a motion? Motion by Mr. Uliano, second.
Second.
Second by Ms. Murillo. Any questions or comments? Call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Okay, next item is Holguín, the 1% ERB contribution. Increase bar.
Good evening, members of the board, Mr. President, Ms. Varela. So this increase bar is for the 1% ERB contribution for Fund 11,000, which is our operational. So over the course of the last couple of years, there has been an approval to increase the ERB on the district share by 1%. So in essence, this amount is to reimburse us for the 1% that we have been actually spending throughout 21-22. So the amount that is being adjusted is 74,331. So the bar is distributed with the same object code, which is 52111, educational retirement, but it's broken down by function depending on the employees that fit into that function. So the biggest part is in instruction on the 1,000, 2,100, and so forth. So the total breaks down into the 74,331. Any questions?
Did it go through the finance committee?
No, this one did not, because we just received it last week, and they are asking that we submit it as soon as possible, because actually the money's in the bank already. They put the money in the bank on Friday. So we will take this to the finance for information's sake, but at this point, it's the state asking us, here's your money that we owe you from this current year. Please bar it so that we can have our books balanced with theirs.
Any other comments?
So, Mr. President, I do recommend approval of the increased bar as presented by Ms. Holking.
You heard the recommendation. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Cordova, second. Second by Mr. Molina. Any other questions or comments? Call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Item G is board reorganization. We moved that one to item 14 on the agenda.
At this time, we need to reorganize the board. Do I hear any nominations?
I nominate Ms. Murillo for president of the board.
You heard the nomination? Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Murillo. Any other comments?
I'll make the comment that the direction that we've been going without a strategic plan, without policies that are in place, without board retreats, without a board assessment, a self-evaluation, I should say, have really made it difficult for this board to function. And I think having heard her interest as well as Mr. Molina's interest on the strategic plan was refreshing to see that on the board. For the last 4 years, that hasn't been a priority, neither has much else. We don't look at curriculum. We do a scant review of a budget. We don't really assess the level of pay in effective way. We don't really get a good assessment of the operation of the schools. We've had a significant turnover, and much of that blamed on COVID, but having Ms. Murillo here demonstrates a large part of that not related to COVID. I think for going forward, having a new leadership communicates to any prospective applicant that we will have a board that's trying to get out, to catch up to the things that we're trying to and should have done already. Policies that were written in 2014 are still in place. I'm glad to see we're moving an effort to do that, but that's 7, 8 years ago. So I hope we consider the change. And I think the current leadership has been in there for a very long time. I think it's close to 30 years. And I think there's a great deal of complacency, a great deal of being satisfied with the status quo. That's brought Cobre down. I think Cobre has a serious challenge in front of it to move forward, to put students on the high priority, and have board meetings that actually communicate to the public what our agenda is and what it is that we're going forward with the students. Transparency is a word here that if it's used, it's misused, or it's referring to the lack of transparency. I would welcome new leadership under Ms. Murillo to move in those directions.
Any other comments?
So I guess I'll speak on my behalf. I know I'm new and I'm learning a lot, but I think with my background in education and my ability to work with others, I think I could be a good leader, and I know that I could count on the support of those who are on this board that have a wealth of knowledge, with sharing that knowledge with me. And like Mr. Guadiana said, I think it's a good faith gesture to our community and prospective superintendents that we are willing to make changes for the betterment of our students, for our staff, and our community.
Other comments? Yep. Call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
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 3-2. Against. Any other?
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion.
Sure.
A motion with a comment. So, I move to keep the board leadership as it is and vote for a secretary, and I'll give my reasoning behind it. I have no doubts that Mrs. Murillo is well qualified to serve in this position. I do believe that moving forward with the strategic plan, with a new superintendent, hopefully on board, continuity is required. I will say that, that being said, with my motion, I would expect some changes, in maybe some thinking and some perspectives from the leadership if they do stay current. There has been times where I've looked at board meetings and, several things are antiquated and, there doesn't seem to be change. So I do agree with Mr. Guardian in regards to that. However, like I said, I believe continuity is key, especially with this transition of the board. We have new board members. We're looking for a superintendent. And so therefore, I move to keep the board leadership as is and vote for a secretary.
You heard the motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Molina, second by Mr. Cordova. Any other comments? Call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Against, same sign.
Aye.
Aye.
3-2 in favor. Entertain a motion for secretary.
Mr. President, I'd like to entertain a motion for secretary for Mrs. Murillo. Again, just to comment, I believe that she does bring a wealth of information to the board, and she could definitely keep the rest of the leadership in check and at least help them out and move forward. And like I said, those ways are antiquated sometimes, and I believe that she can probably bring a fresh breath of air into that leadership. So I move to nominate Ms. Murillo for secretary.
You heard the motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
I decline the nomination.
You what?
I decline the nomination.
Okay, then there's no need, you heard Ms. Murillo decline, so there's no need for a second. Do you hear a nomination for secretary?
I nominate Mr. Molina for secretary.
You heard the nomination, do I hear a second? Second? Any other comments?
I appreciate the nomination. I do believe that with the second board meeting under my belt, I think I do need some time to go ahead and grasp the duties of the board member first of all. And so, although I do appreciate the nomination, that I believe I still need a little bit of work in regards to board member duties.
Okay. Any other comments? Call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Against? Same sign?
Aye.
I abstain.
Okay. We have a 2-2 and 1 abstain. So that's where we're at. We'll still need to vote on a secretary here in the next board meeting, maybe. We'll keep putting it on the agenda, Joyce, until we get a secretary.
With all due respect, if we don't have a secretary, we don't have a co-signer on checks. So we have to have a president and a secretary in order to be able to print checks.
I'm not sure if everybody heard that, but Ms. Hogan's comment is that currently on all our checks, we have 2 signatures, president's signature and secretary's signature. We still have our previous secretary's name on the checks, and so we do need a secretary so that we can add that person to be able to sign checks.
Okay. So again, I'll entertain a motion for secretary.
Can I make a clarification? When we voted for keeping the leadership the same, did that include the vice president or just the president?
Both.
Okay, so
The leadership,
so
yeah.
it wouldn't be open to nominating Mr. Cordova as secretary?
I don't know how that would work. I guess we could be vice president / secretary. I guess that's what we could do.
Okay, because I was under the impression when we voted for leadership, it was the president, the position of president, board president, not vice president.
Now, when he said leadership, he meant like in the past when Mr. Gomez was here, there was a couple of times that they voted to keep it the same, so all the board, the president, vice president, and secretary stayed the same.
The officer stayed the same?
Yes,
Okay, I guess it's just like in the wording, I considered leadership simply the president, the office of president,
No,
not
but-
the office of president
No,
and
but-
vice president.
But that's what they meant, the officers. So, do we have I'll entertain a motion for vice president / secretary? None? Okay. So I guess nobody gets
Just-
paid, Terry?
Just to follow up on what Ms. Hogan says, under our policies, it says, "The secretary shall sign legal documents as required by law and perform other such duties as may be prescribed."
Okay. If not, there's none, then in that case, I'll appoint one. Mr. Molina, you're appointed. Okay, that moves us to,
So, Mr. Molina, you will need to get with Terry because we will need to move forward with the signature.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
okay, that moves us to item 14. The March 14 regular meeting during spring break. Ms.
Okay, hold on. I need to get reorganized here. Okay, so we do have a regular board meeting scheduled for Monday, but that is during spring break, so I don't know if the board wants to continue with that meeting or if they want to do one of two things, either, so we have a few choices here. We could keep the meeting as it is, knowing we will not have the meeting streamed because our guys will be on spring break. We can move the meeting to another date, or we can just keep our next regular board meeting, which is March 28th. Knowing that if we don't have another regular board meeting until March 28th, there is a possibility that we might have to have a special board meeting based on things that are coming down from NMPED that might need board approval. One of the items, for example, is our ARP application. So our ARP application was substantially, it was approved, it was brought to the board, it was substantially approved by the state, and now we're required to revise our application because we have to put a lot more detail into our narrative. And so since we're doing that, we've kind of are looking at making some adjustments to the ARP application. For example, as we're discussing staffing with our principals, one of the items that was brought up is to have a teacher do SEL classes at the elementary. So that's just one example of some of the changes that we're making. So we would need to bring that back to the board. It is due to the feds March 24th. But what we're required to do is revise our application. We're really looking at the narratives. We have to give it to one of our PED consultants that's working directly with our district to make sure that the narratives are okay. And then we need to bring it to the board so that we can put it forward to get it to the feds by the 24th. So again, this is the time of year when things come down from the state kind of rapidly, and sometimes we don't have a very big turnaround to be able to make things happen. So those are our choices on the board meeting moving forward for March.
You said our next board meeting is the 28th?
The next regular board meeting after that is March 28th.
Can we go ahead and just keep that one and not have one during spring break? I don't know if that's a lot what we're ready, but that way those that take off.
Yeah. So if we, Ms. Murillo's kind of asking a question, if we do need to have it done by the 24th, I know we're going to be working over spring break so that we can get it finished. We were not given a big turnaround time for this. So we would probably have it ready. Our goal is to have it finished by Monday so that we could get it to our PED rep so she could review it, make sure that it's going to be accepted, and then we would bring it to the board the 21st, 22nd. The difficult thing is we have to make sure that we get the legal notice out in time, and so we're kind of scrambling here.
Can you get one more day there, the 23rd?
Mm-hmm.
For the legal notice?
So we could probably plan on having a special board meeting 22nd, maybe, I mean, honestly, 23rd would be better for us.
Let's have it the 23rd if that's okay with everybody.
Oh, yes, 22nd is the regional board meeting, so we already have that scheduled from 5:30 to 7. So if we could look at maybe having a special board meeting on the 23rd, we would be able to bring that to the board at that time.
I kind of favor
And our
the,
district is not the only one. I mean, it's all districts throughout the state that have already brought their ARP application to the board and are having to make revisions.
I favor the 21st in a sense that at least we get to look at it and digest it a little bit rather than having it pretty much have to be rubber stamped.
So we've been coming in, Ms. Davis, Ms. Minus and myself, we've been coming in at 7 o'clock in the morning so that we can try to get it finished, and our plan is to stay till however time we need to stay, Wednesday and Thursday, so that we can get as much done as we can. We've basically already completed the budget piece of it. Now's the hard part, because what they're asking for in the narrative is we have to cite actual research-based strategies, and we have to cite data. Yes, thank you. We have to make it all relevant to data. So we've got to pull some of our data to be able to do the narrative. So, I mean, our goal is, yes, to have it done by the, like I say, 16th, 17th. So we should be ready for the 21st, ladies, you think? To bring it to the board? Okay.
What date was that?
The 21st is on Monday?
The 21st.
The Monday following spring break?
That's-
So from the
And-
14th to the 21st?
So that'll give us spring break to get it done.
And this going through the finance committee?
We won't have time. I'm sorry, but like I say, we just had our meeting with PED on Friday at 10 o'clock in the morning, where we were given all this information. So now we're trying to make those revisions and do a very, very quick turnaround.
So the next meeting is going to be the 21st.
We'll make it a special board meeting, so we'll only add the one item on the agenda? Okay.
Yeah.
Unless something else comes up from the state in the next few days.
That's an action item.
Can we not have an update on the HYA, on the superintendent search?
He's going to be doing
Interviews or? Okay.
What does his timeline show, Ms. Murillo, on that?
The week of March 21st through 25th is stakeholder listening sessions conclude. So they should be done the week before. Leadership profile development and recruiting is on the timeline for the superintendent search.
So we can add him to the agenda just to give us an update on where we are. So,
Okay.
Mr. President, it is an action item, so.
Yeah. Entertain a motion to have our next board meeting on the 21st.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Murillo, second.
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Guadiana. Our next meeting, the 21st. Call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next meeting, March 21st.
Under unfinished business, first item on the agenda is board retreat discussion. We did have a presentation from Mr. Chavez on what CES would be able to offer, but I mean, we can continue. We have a couple of choices here. We could either continue to look for somebody else, or we could consider using CES to do the board retreat. So this is just for discussion at this time.
Well, there again, we need to look and see what day everybody can be there for the retreat, because the retreat will do us no good if only a few of the members are there. Everybody needs to be there at that one.
So, and I guess the question is, would we want to move forward with CES, or would we want to look at other people before we set dates? Because in order to set the dates, I think that we would also need to look at their calendar, whoever would be facilitating the retreat.
Yeah, I think, go ahead and look at their calendar and then see if that fits with everybody here.
And perhaps also looking at the cost of the different
Yeah.
people that can provide the retreat training.
Okay.
To bring that back to the next regular board meeting as an agenda, as an action item.
Then that moves us to item B, status of SB 9 projected projects.
Mr. Peru?
Board President, members of the board. Ms. Varela, one of the things that we just wanted to bring up is we've been looking at the priority projects for Senate Bill 9. So now that we've been able to visit as a leadership team, we've been looking at what would be the priorities. So we're now able to move to the next stage, which now we can build the budget for the Senate Bill 9. I think we can bring that at a later time, so after we get everything set up, and then we can move on that, because it'll be an action item at that point. Any questions?
No? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peru. Under new business, we have overview of House Bill 2 as it relates to salary increases. Ms. Hogan, hold on just a minute. Ms. Hemphill, are you still back there somewhere? Could we flip you? And could we go ahead and let Ms. Hemphill go ahead and go first with legislative updates? You were having kind of screen that put I couldn't see you.
I know, I should have. Thank you, Mr. President and members of the board for
Yeah,
this opportunity.
But she didn't tell you she was going to flip, but I thought she put it down here. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board, and Ms. Barella for the opportunity to give you a legislative update. Before I get started, though, I do want to extend an invitation for a Conscious Discipline Symposium, a half-day symposium that will be August the 21st in the morning. So tentatively, we haven't absolutely solidified the time it's going to start, but sometime around 8 to 12. It will be in the morning, though. Dr. Becky Bailey, the founder of Conscious Discipline, will be coming to Silver City to offer this symposium in the hopes that we have a school district that will be willing to be a pilot program for this trauma-informed social-emotional behavior program. This is evidence-based. It was really a reason why I decided to run for office. I came to a Challenging Child workshop that Western put on, this annual Challenging Child workshop. Just happened to be right here on this stage, 2011, and we had a master instructor from Conscious Discipline who was presenting on that day. It was a fall day, 2011, remember it vividly because it changed my life. And she was talking about the brain states that we have available to us when we're solving a social conflict, and how important it is that we understand what kinds of strategies we need to be in the highest brain states so that we can choose a response when we're solving social conflict instead of reacting in an unconscious way where we're name calling or we are fighting or using less productive strategies. So that really became the foundation for the strategies that I utilize when I'm working with children who in the schools who have behavior challenges. And so I this is just a passion of mine. I want to help to spread this information to people in the community. And so I worked with Dr. Shepard, grateful for his support. He's going to give us the venue, Light Hall at Western New Mexico University, and he's agreed to pay for Dr. Becky Bailey to come to New Mexico, which is incredibly meaningful to me because this is really where she got her start. She was working on the Navajo Nation. She's a clinical psychologist. She traveled a lot. And one morning she looked out and saw this dog that was caught up in her fence. It was half dead. She rescued the dog. It was half coyote and half domestic dog and very wild. And she created this protocol so that when she was traveling and somebody was coming to help care for the dog, they had some very specific instructions to follow to stay safe and to keep the dog safe. And that became the foundation of this program that she started specifically for children, for schools. It addresses the culture of our schools. And I have talked with the Secretary of PED, Dr. Steinhaus. He's also going to be coming. He said this is a priority for him. And the Deputy Secretary, Gwen Warnament, is also going to come. And so I really believe that key to changing the education system in New Mexico for the better is to have that buy-in from the top down. And so it would be incredibly meaningful if the board members here at Cobre, which is home to me, my parents went to Cobre, I went to Cobre, Bayard Elementary, Snell, Cobre High. And so it would be so meaningful to me if Cobre could be one of the pilot programs here in New Mexico. And as a member of Senate Finance, whatever I could do to help advocate for funds, to help promote this, I think that it would be really important for us to do that, to provide the ongoing training for our teachers and for parents, to be able to offer parent trainings, parent classes. So, this is my 28th year in education. I've been a school psychologist for 20 years now, and parents want to know how to help their children in the most beneficial way, and teachers want to know how they can help support children, especially those who are really struggling with behaviors. So again, that I will be, once everything's formalized, I'll be sending out more formal invitations to everybody. And so with that, I'd like to...
Can I
yes,
clarify?
Please.
You said August. We had talked
I meant April.
That's
Sorry,
what I
April
thought. Okay.
21st. So thank you for
I just wanted to
that
clarify because
correction.
I remember we had talked about April.
Yes, April. So for our 30-day budget-focused session, we had a very big agenda, but we were able to get a lot of really good stuff through, especially education-related legislation. And so I'm going to focus on education policy that we were able to get through and mental well-being, since those are most appropriate for this venue and also near and dear to my heart and the reasons I ran for office. But we really passed a historic budget, $8.5 billion. And being a member of the Legislative Finance Committee, we spent a lot of time during the interim listening to agencies and coming up with a framework for this budget so that we were making sure we were prioritizing evidence-based policies and ideas so that this money can really go toward investing in families in New Mexico and investing in our school system, investing in healthcare, and all of those things that we need to lift New Mexico up. And so one of the bills that I was really honored to sponsor was Senate Bill 1, which created an increase in minimum salaries for teachers specifically. We have over 1,000 vacancies in New Mexico, and I know that all of you know what a crisis this is right now. And so we really wanted to make sure we were addressing that critical need right now in New Mexico. So Senate Bill 1 was able to show our educators that we respect them, respect the work that they're doing. We understand the challenges that so many people have faced, so many teachers, educators, and administrators right now during the pandemic. It's been incredibly stressful for the whole world, but certainly teachers have endured additional challenges. And the disruption to our routines and predictability in the schools definitely trickles down to our children. And so children are really dysregulated now, and this is the time to really be investing in policies that will address those needs of our children and support all of our mental well-being, because we're all, struggling now. The world feels heavy now, and we need to recognize that and own that and prioritize addressing those issues. Of course, we had House Bill 140. The governor was here last week to sign this bill. It was the lottery, the opportunity scholarship. So we will now have free tuition in New Mexico for anyone seeking a certificate, anyone seeking an associate degree or a bachelor's degree. And we also passed House Bill 13, which is teacher residency changes policy. And so this increases stipends for teacher residents, mentor educators, and administrators who participate in a PED-approved teacher preparation program. So we all know how important that is to offer to educators, especially new educators, that mentoring piece, because often you come into the classroom and you have no idea how to set up your classroom. I started out as a kindergarten teacher back in 1994 and walked into this classroom with all the furniture pushed up against the wall and didn't even know where to start. And then I had 32 kids on top of that, and so I didn't have the mentorship to know how to start a classroom in the fall, how to address classroom management and all of those challenges that maybe you have an idea, but when you're actually there in reality, often you have children that may be displaying behaviors that you've never seen before, or maybe they have a disability and you want to be helpful, but you really need that mentorship from more experienced teachers who may have better skills in dealing with those really challenging behaviors. And I know with Ms. Barella, we've worked several times with new teachers who didn't have that classroom management piece, and it's incredibly really dysregulating to the teacher and the whole class, and demoralizing. Those are the teachers that leave. You get a challenging group of children and it will literally break you, and you're going to go into a different profession. So we need to be providing that support to those new teachers. As far as mental health goes, there was $20 million to expand, implement, and staff evidence-based Medicaid behavior health and child welfare services, and $750 million, which includes federal match rates, to remove all people from the DD waiver waiting list. I have a child who waited over a decade in order to receive DD waiver services, so it was so incredibly meaningful to me to have that buy-in from the other legislators who understand how important it is that we support those most vulnerable in our communities. So that it just brought me to tears to see that support, to have the families come in during our LFC meeting to advocate for that investment to eliminate the waiting list. And so we're going to be able to achieve that, and there's no better time than right now during this pandemic as we continue to deal with the pandemic. And we also had $3.4 million for quality, compassionate treatment and prevention programs for substance disorder treatment, suicide prevention, and gun violence prevention. And $16 million to CYFD to implement evidence-based services like early intervention, intensive care management, therapy for families, wraparound services, and supportive housing for those who are aging out of foster care. Of course, we passed the crime and public safety package, And that increased death benefits for families of officers killed in the line of duty to $1 million. It ends the gay panic defense, which were a few of the highlights. We also passed a tax package that includes a child tax credit. We excluded Social Security income for lower and middle class seniors from being taxed, and we lowered the GRT for the first time in 40 years, and then we have a one-time tax credit for nurses and veterans. And we also invested in the New Mexico Housing Trust Fund that'll increase our ability to support people who need to weatherize their home or rehabilitate their homes. And as far as capital outlay for specifically for Cobre, we were able to come together as a legislative group, the other representatives, myself and Priscilla Lucetto, and provide Cobre with $350,000 for new buses and $100,000 for new vehicles. So with that, does anyone have any questions?
That is quite a list for a 30-day session.
It was busy.
We really appreciate having you to advocate for education, because we need somebody like you there. So we
I
really
appreciate
having
that.
you.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity again, and it was an honor just to serve our community and represent our community on the Senate Finance Committee, Legislative Finance Committee, and in the Senate.
And I also want to say thank you as a teacher for all the amazing things that were accomplished during this session. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
For appreciating
And I
us.
hope to see you on April 21st in the morning.
I plan on being there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I wanted to say thank you as well, and I'm impressed that you got so much of your agenda on this, and it's a very meaningful one, so.
Thank you. It was an
Well
honor
done.
to pass 4 bills this session, well, 1 memorial and 3 bills, and last session 9 bills. So incredibly grateful for that opportunity and the support from the other senators as well.
Thank you.
Josiah, Senator Hemphill. All right, now Ms. Holguin will follow up to talk a little bit more in detail about that great salary increases that we got.
Yes.
Okay, Victor, could you put the PowerPoint, please?
So tonight I have a PowerPoint presentation for you on the salary implications of House Bill 2, the General Appropriations Act. So if you've hit show slide, show presentation from the beginning.
If you can make it bigger, that'd be great.
I think once you hit show, run the presentation, then it'll go to the full screen. And just run from the beginning.
Daniel, if you go to the tabs on the top where it says slideshow. Okay.
So just to lead into that, the way the legislative session went, it's, the salary increases are actually being done in phases. So the first phase, and we'll see this on the first slide, but I'll go ahead and begin. The salary increases began in FY22, which is current. It's a little bit,
It's a little
it's a little
fuzzy,
small, but
or can you make it bigger, please?
I don't know if that's because the font I use, but go back.
Yeah, go back to the slide, that one.
So basically, the salary increases for FY22, the first phase says 3% increase on the base salary for the last quarter of the fiscal year. And that is a key point because it is not a 3% increase total. It is 3% on the last quarter. So basically, who's eligible is public school employees, and the language says that funds are allocated to the Public Education Department and distributed in accordance to the proportion of state equalization guarantee, which is SEG, or operational funding, received by each school district and charter school. So Cobre School District's allocation for the initial 3% on the quarter is $80,398. Now, we just received that allocation last week as well, so that one will have time to go through the finance and also bring a bar back to the board for that. Now, we estimate the cost with benefits at $87,000, so we'll be a little short. But that estimated cost right now, just on initial view, is that we have some employees that are split funded between grant funds and operational funds. So what we're looking at is that $7,000 may be pretty close to what we would receive out of the, cost out of the grant funds. So we're looking at, and we've been advised that we can use CARES money to cover that deficit if need be. So we'll be looking at that before we present the bar and make sure that we have everybody allocated for the cost to that $80,398. Now remember, it's important to note that the 3% increase, while applied to the employee's FY base salary, is not retroactive and applies only to the final quarter of FY22. So it begins April 1st to June 30th. So that is only on the last quarter of the year. So this means that an employee will receive 1/4 of 3% increase to their base salary. And I'll be showing some examples, and which 3% of a quarter is 0.0075.
Can
So-
we move to the?
Not yet.
Oh, not yet.
So this, I'm going to show some examples next. So next slide, the first example.
Can we move to the next slide, please, guys?
Okay, so say your FY22 base salary is $50,000. That would be like roughly a level 2. Thank you, Victor. That would be a level 2 teacher at 3% equals $1,500 for the total. And then $1,500 divided by the 4, which is for the quarter. The salary adjustment for this final quarter would be $375, which doesn't include benefits. That is a gross. So you have $375, you add ERB, retiree health, FICA, and Medicare. Now, it doesn't include insurance because your insurance has already been calculated on your base salary, so it doesn't include insurance, but it does include those 4 benefits, which will come up off of that. So you won't be seeing $375.
Could you repeat the 4 benefits that will be taken out?
The benefits that'll be taken out would be ERB, retiree health, FICA, and Medicare. Those are the base benefits that have to come off of everything.
And so this will be distributed through the last few checks of the year?
Well,
Or are you gonna
actually,
give it
this
as a
would be a
chunk?
this would be a lump sum. So the way the district is tentatively planning on doing that is for the employees that their contract ends in May, we would pay it out in May on a special payroll that we would do just this, so that it doesn't get muddled in with everything else that you're getting paid during the year, and that you can actually see, what you got on the increase, okay? So another example would be for a lower paid employee, which is $25,000, sorry. $25,000, so 3% on $25,000 is $750. So 750 divided by 4 only gives you $187.50. So when you take benefits off of that, it could be just slightly over $100. So we are not there's some districts that are calling it a retention bonus. Some people are calling it, other things. We will not call it that because it's far from a bonus. Okay, so the new base salary for that would be $25,000 times the 3% would give you the new base for FY23 of $25,750, which is an hourly rate of 15.5 on a full year 220-day employee working 7.64 hours, only because that's how it calculates when you have a 220. So $15 we're going to talk about, because that's another legislative piece that came into effect, which means your minimum salaries have to go to $15. So we'll talk about that in a couple of slides. Going back just to make sure that I covered it is very important to note that we have to take the new base, which is the $50,000 times 3% for $51,500, because that is becoming the new base at which we calculate the new FY23 salary. Okay, so I wanted to point that out because further examples will go forward with the new calculation. So when they talk about the salary increase of 7%, the calculation is as approved by the legislature is 3% calculated on the FY22, which I already showed, and then for the initial fourth quarter adjustment, we used it for that. And then the statute states that going forward, it's your 4% stated in the statute as follows. So there was $140,800,000 appropriated from the general fund for providing an average salary increase of 4%. So see, there's nowhere where it's written exactly 7%. It is 3% and 4% average. And I'm going to show how we show the 4% average and what exactly that means. So when you look at your examples for average, you have your base that you calculated at 3%. Now when we talk about average, we have to take 4% on the total salaries that we are paying out of that fund. Okay, so let's say we have $9.7 million that we're paying in operational salaries. We take 4% of the total, and so your adjustment is going to be $388,000 divided by the number of employees, and we're using 220. We've got roughly 218 right now, but it could change, one way or the other. So this is for example only. It's not exact figures. So then you would get 1763, and that would be to every single employee on your operational. Okay, so it wouldn't be a 4% across the board. So when you add to the 3% increase, the 1763, you get a new base salary of 53,263. Now, on a 50,000 employee, if you went across the board and just did 4% for each person, you would get 53,560, which is pretty close, but it's not the same. If you applied 7% on the 50,000, you'd get like the 53,500, which is really close to the across the board, but not to the average. Okay, so we've got this example as a mid-range. Now you go to a lower employee, which is $25,000. You do the same 3%, and you add the 1763, which is to every single employee we've determined. Okay, so now their new base for FY23 is 27,513. Now look at the difference when you go across the board, 4% on just their salary, it's 26,780. So you see a difference of $733 that they wouldn't have gotten at the lower end by not doing the average. Okay? So then the next example gives you the higher end of the scale. And so your 3% would give you 103,000. So when you take the average, all that person is getting is 1763 plus the 103,000 gives you 104,000. But look at if we had gone across the board, that same person would have gotten 107,120. So it's leveling, it's equalizing to the bottom. So the difference there is $2,300, $2,357, that is now going towards the lower end of the scale rather than to the top. Okay?
In the average, like for all the teachers, for example,
All
employees.
Starting from the administration all the way down to your custodians and to your instructional aides. You're going all the way down. So you're taking everybody and you're giving them the same dollar amount rather than giving them 4% each.
Of each of their
Yeah,
salaries.
which for $100,000 would have given somebody a $2,300 increase, and at the bottom only like 700 or you know 800 or whatever. Okay, so it's taking that 23 and it's distributing it more equitably down to the bottom. Okay, so now we're looking at the legislative session also said that we have to go to a $15 per hour minimum. So now you take your instructional assistant and you had an instructional assistant starting pay at $14,502 with the 3%. So now you're doing the 4% average of the 1763 will get them to $16,700. Across the board, they would have only gotten $15,534. So you can see the difference there. So when you look at the hourly pay on the average, the $16,700, that's $12.32 on a 165-day contract working at 7.64 hours. Okay, so they don't meet the minimum there. So what you have to do is go to the $15 an hour, do their contractual days and hours, and you're going to get the $18,909. So their new base is 30% higher than their old base. Okay, so rather than get a 7% increase, this person got a 30% increase. Okay, now we're going to talk about the new salary minimums for teachers. So this is what Senator Hemphill was talking about, you know, passing the minimums for the levels. So we went from 41,000 for level 1 to 50,000. from 50 to 60 on a level 2, and from 60 to 70 on a level 3. Okay? And I'm going to show the implications of that by the next examples. Oops. Okay, so the example of the level 1 teacher started at $41,000. We did that same calculation of the 1763 for the average. We're going to ignore now the across the board and the 7% because that's irrelevant now. And so you have 43,993 as your new FY23. Well, that doesn't get them to $50,000. So now they have to be increased the $7,000 to the $50,000, and so that's a 21.9% increase, okay, rather than a 7. We have your level 2, which goes to a 20% increase because you go from $53,263 to $60,000. Okay, so that's a 20% increase. And you're, oh, I think I went too fast. Yeah, sorry. So this is level 2, right here at the 60,000. This was your level 1 at your, to go to 50,000. Okay, and then your level 3 went to 70,000. And that's a 16.667% increase. So pretty much your teachers got way higher than the 7%. Okay, so then we have there's actual minimums for the extended learning time program for teachers participating in ELTP. So the new salary minimums and percentage increase for those participating in ELTP, which is the requirement of 10 extra days. So it went for level 2 to 52,000, level 2 to 63,333 for 27%, and 79 for the level 3 teacher. So it's 29, 27, and 23% increases for those participating. And we are an ELTP district, so those are going to be additional, they're going to be, Joyce, the contracts, we're going to set the base at what the base is supposed to be, and then we're going to put an addendum to the contract that shows their ELTP base.
And or K5 or K12 plus.
And so the next one shows the K5 plus pilot. So there's minimums for that too. So it's 56,944 for level 1 for a 39% increase, 68,333 for 37% increase, 79,722 for a 33% increase. And on K5 pilot, we are in our second year of the commitment that we made last year to K5s. So we will be participating in at least the ELTP and the K5 plus. Before I turn it over, I will let Ms. Barela go into the new one, which is the K12. That's a pilot as well, right, Joyce? But before I do that, for my last slide, the ELTP and K5 Plus gives you an addition, doing both programs gives you an additional 3% on the base, which would get a level 1 teacher to 58,000, 43% increase, 70,000 for level 2, and 82,000 for level 3. So those are pretty good increases for participating in all programs.
So in order to get this additional 3%, a teacher has to do ELTP and K5?
Yes, and so those would be just for the elementary programs because they're not eligible in the middle school and the high school. But this is something that Ms. Barela's looking at because the PED has put out a new application for K12, which we can't get out of our contract for K5, but they will allow us to add K12 as your 6th through 12th grade.
Okay, because I was under the impression that if you chose to do ELTP, it would give you the 3% without having to also do the K-5
This is an
plus.
additional 3%. So if you notice, it bumped up each time, so
So it
this,
would be a 13% increase.
it would actually be,
Because with the 3 this year, then the 4 for next year, and then the additional 3 for ELTP would be 10.
10.
But K-5 plus would be an additional 3?
No, it's to do both of them, you get the additional 3%.
Okay, because I was under the
It takes
impression
you-
it was just ELTP gave you the 3%.
And it does, Ms. Hogan, it does say ELTP or K-5 plus. Add an additional average 3% raise for staff at schools participating in the extended learning type program or K-5 plus.
well, it takes you from a $50,000 salary, if you do extended learning, to a $52,000 salary. And then if you do the K-5, that one instead, because it's different days, so K-5 is 10 extra days. ELTP, K-5 is 20 extra days, right, Joyce? So 25 extra days. So that's being calculated roughly against the number of days required in the program. So for a 180-day contract, okay, not 165. So the 52,000 divided by the 180-day contract would give you an additional percentage on your base salary of 50,000. Okay, but when you go to K-5, the $56,000, it's more days.
So at the elementary last year, when we chose to go with the K-5 plus pilot, as opposed to it being additional days, it was extended days. So the elementaries added the extended time to their days. The K-12 application has not come out yet. We did have a meeting with PED today. They're hoping to get that application out within the next couple of weeks. But with the K-12, they would be able to have a combination of days stacked with ELTP and then extended days. So part of the superintendent report is to talk about calendar. So we have had already 2 calendar meetings. It's kind of hard for secondary to make a final decision until we get the application for K-12 because we don't know exactly all the parameters and the requirements that it's going to have. So right now, middle school and high school staff are talking about the possibility of doing the K-12. Again, it's going to be dependent in talking with Deputy Secretary Sandoval. We have been told that we can stack 10 days with the K-5, with the ELTP, which would leave them doing the equivalents in hours of the 10 days. So we're waiting for the application to come out so that we can have clarification on that. But principals are already talking with staff to determine whether or not that's something we want to do. Again, it's really hard to finalize that decision until we know exactly what it's going to look like when we get the application.
And will ELT be required of teachers, or is it optional?
If we choose to do it as a district, it'll be as a district. So that's part of the discussion right now too with the calendar. So we're looking at some different options. Last year when we did the 10 days, we did 4 days the first week of school and that Friday. We did all the days in the fall. We've taught some of our conversations in calendar this year are to do the 4 days up front, 3 Fridays in the fall, and 3 Fridays in the spring, as opposed to putting all the days in the fall. So those are still things that we're discussing. We haven't finalized any decisions. We talk about it in calendar, then people on the calendar committee go back to their schools and have the discussions with their staff so that we can see which way we're going to go. But we've made no final decisions yet.
Okay, so it's different from that first summer we had ELT where it was optional.
Yes, because if we choose to do it, we're going to do it district-wide.
Okay.
Does anybody have any other questions on the?
Conversations that we're getting from principals right now is that it does appear that the majority of the teachers are in favor of the ELTP days, We're just right now trying to finalize and confirm the K-12. And again, it's just kind of hard when you don't have all the, final decisions made to try to make those decisions at a local level.
And where does the teachers that have, have their masters plus so many things,
So,
where does
okay,
the raise fall with them?
So level 1 teacher, those are basically the teachers who are at their first year through their 5th year, because by their 5th year, they have to complete their dossier to move on to level 2. A teacher could stay at level 2 forever for the rest of their career and never move up. 2 things that they have to do to be able to move to level 3 is they have to have a master's, and they have to have done at least 3 years at level 2. So that would be like on their 8th year, they could be able to move up to level 3 as long as they have their master's. And some teachers choose not to get their master's, which is why they stay at level 2 forever, or through their career. They also have to do a dossier. Right. So from level 1 to 2 is a dossier, from level 2 to a 3 is a dossier and a master's. So the people that you're talking about, those would be level 3.
And then, Mr. Sepulveda, the other side of your question is that we are building salary schedules based on the new minimums and bumping up what needs to be bumped up, because the PED requires that salary schedules, unfortunately, only by $1 go up per year, but they don't all go at 50,000, all the way down into the schedule. It has to be incremental. So we will be bringing, before we finalize those salary schedules, we need to bring those and get them approved through the board. So that's going to be part of the budget prep discussions with finance, the work sessions, and then also the budget prep. So one thing that Ms. Varela alluded to earlier and didn't really say is that our budget due date has been set as the earliest date in the state. So it's April 15th, which we're in discussion with the PED because those are legal holidays for us. It's Good Friday and the Easter Monday, which for us are legal holidays. So we're looking at whether or not they can adjust, but the only thing they could possibly do that we can see is move it up and not move it forward. So we would be shortening ourselves by a couple of days because of that, but we'd rather do that than have employees, work on a legal holiday. So.
And with that too, though, our budget conference is April 6th through 8th. And so in meetings that we've been having with PED, so we have the earliest date possible, but like the ELTP application has not come out. The New Mexico Dash website is not ready yet either. And so a lot of the pieces that we need as a district to be able to put our budget together, we're not going to have those until later on. And a lot of the things they keep telling us, you'll get that at budget conference, you'll get that at budget conference. And again, budget conference is April 6th to 8th. So our budget would probably be due April 14th. So there again, we're probably going to have a special board meeting in order to be able to pass that, in order to be able to submit our budget. Because on the day that we submit our budget, Terry needs to be available so that if they have corrections, she has to be able to do them immediately.
And the other thing is they're trying to get the unit value out so we can estimate the revenue. They don't have it out yet. So they usually it's the budget conference that has the unit value, which projects the revenue for us to work off of. We're working off of the current, final unit value for this year, but it's likely, they told us to work 10% higher. I would work a little bit more conservatively at like 7 to 8%, but we'll have to make those adjustments when we actually get that number to fit it into where we go in our budget. So, things like whether or not, we're funding everybody out of, the operational side, or we're having to split fund, we're going to have to get all that done but we may have to shift it when we get our unit value and know whether or not we have all the funding for these mandates or if we have to supplement those.
The board knows, people in finance, myself, Ms. Davis, Ms. Minus, we will be reworking our spring break. We will have to work through our spring break because of, again, the ARP application and to really work on trying to get our budget completed as much as possible. So we will be revising our days and taking different days as our spring break because we know that there's certain tasks that need to be done during that week. With the unit value, what they generally do is they generally give you your unit value at the spring budget conference, and then in January they give an adjusted unit value as you all approved or need to approve for this year on our adjustment. What Secretary Steinhaus has said is he's hoping to put the whole unit value out at the beginning of the year, which means now, instead of trying to do it in 2 different phases for next year. So hopefully that'll help us, going forward as well. So again, we have a lot of challenges ahead of us just based on dates and timing of everything. And so, we are working closely with PED. Again, we did have a meeting with them today. They're working their hardest to get the applications and the websites open and everything else that needs to be open for us to be able to complete what we need to complete. So, again, we'll need the board's patience to have another special board meeting to get this cleared.
Are there any other questions for me? Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Terry. Okay, that moves us to item C. Mr. Cordova.
One of the things that I wanted to briefly talk about was you all got the agenda for the Region 8 meeting, which is March 22nd. Starts at 5:30. And then 5:45 to 6:30, we have election of officers and resolutions. From 6:30 to 7:30, the Walsh Gallegos law firm is going to do the training, which is board authority, responsibility, and roles. And then we'll close at 7:30 or thereof a little bit. The other thing that I wanted to briefly talk about a little bit was a couple of board meetings ago, I think that I talked about this student achievement award, and I asked that we as board members submit a name, and I asked Mr. Sepulveda, our president, and he said nobody had submitted anything. It is March the 7th. March the 11th is the deadline, so we might be out of the running because it's got to be at Santa Fe by then. Thank you.
Thank you. And the Region 8 meeting, is it going to be virtual or? Yeah, okay.
Get a link for the meeting already? Or is it on the flyer right there? Oh, it's on the top. I think that's on the top. Okay.
Okay. We don't have any administration, so that moves us to public input on any item on the agenda. Do we have anything? Anything, Victor? No? Okay, Superintendent Report.
There are no fundraiser forms, so Mr. Peru will give a facilities update.
Board President, members of the board. It's actually a pretty brief one. Just want to let you all know that we are still continuing to install the ream purifiers. They're coming in. It's gotten a little slower. We're trying to, been a couple of areas that we've had to put them into that has taken a little bit more work than we were anticipating. One of the things that I was also is we are currently working on lowering all the fire extinguisher cabinets in all the high school. When the high school was built in 1953, some of those cabinets are about the top of them is 7 foot, so an average person can't really get those fire extinguishers out of there. We hadn't changed anything and done anything with them because of the fact that we were looking at going to construction on that school some years back. So in visiting with the fire marshal this last time, he asked that we get them all removed and get them down to the code level. If we didn't, they were going to shut that school down. So we moved on it. Right now, Johnny Pettis, which is the one that does the construction for us in the district, he is the one lowering every one of those there. We have close to 30 of them that he's lowering. So it takes some time because we're cutting into the concrete walls to lower them. And that way they're not mounted out away from the wall, because we were worried if they were mounted out away from the wall that some of the kids would run into them or they would get torn down. So what we're doing is we're taking the old ones and moving them down. So hopefully we'll have that completed by the end of the month. One of the things that we're doing also is, I had talked before about LED lighting, and we had an electrician come in and work with Mr. Cardosa, and one of the things that we're doing is as the light goes out, every time it goes out, whether it's a ballast or anything like that, we're just converting them over to LEDs. So in some of the classrooms, some of the hallways, you'll walk in and part of the hallway is a lot brighter than some of the other part of the hallway, but we're changing them out as they go out. We had I want to say about 8 of them go out in the North Hall at the high school, and those have all been replaced. They're all LED lights now. And we're also changing all the exit signs for the fire also to LEDs also. One of the things that we're also doing is we're moving forward with all the pre-K classrooms, pre-K playgrounds. We have to have all those jobs completed by June 30th, so we are moving on them. We got all the quotes in already. We're looking at getting them all in the system so we can get them into POs. As soon as we get them into POs, we will be able to start moving on them, because the only one we have a PO for right now is Hurley, so we're moving on all the other ones so that we can get the jobs completed. As soon as we have the POs to them, the contractor said they would schedule us, and they would work effortlessly to try and get them all completed. Okay, that's all I have for the report. Any questions on anything?
Questions?
No? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peru. We did have a work session today, so that has already taken place. On the audit updates, Mike Stone, they are currently finishing up with the audit. We did have some delays due to some sickness in our district and some sickness within their organization as well, so they are trying to get that finished up. I did give a little bit of information on the calendar already, and then on Friday we did have professional development. You were given a copy of the schedule, so we had some really productive sessions on Friday for our professional development. And that concludes my superintendent report.
Thank you. Student rep report had turned in? No? Okay. Next one is public input. Do we have any public input? Victor?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. Okay. The next one is I'll entertain a motion to go into executive. The motion to go into executive?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Murillo, second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Guadiana. Take a roll call vote. Mr. Guadiana?
Aye.
Mr. Molina?
Aye.
Myself, yes. Mr. Cordova?
Yes.
Ms. Murillo?
Yes.
Okay. We're enclosed. Entertain a motion to come back into open session? Motion by Mr. Cordova, second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Guadiana. Take a roll call vote. Mr. Guadiana?
Aye.
Mr. Molina?
Aye.
Myself, yes. Mr. Cordova?
Yes.
Ms. Murillo?
Yes.
We're back into open. We went into executive session at 8:24 to discuss under section 1-15-1H. No action was taken at that time. So,
So, Mr. President, next item on the agenda is item number 14, 2021-2022 SEG Unit Value Bar. Ms. Hogan?
okay. Do we have that?
So the budget adjustment that's requested is for Fund 11,000, which is SCG. The PED has done a calculation that increased the final unit value from $4,770.70 to $4,863 for an adjustment of $92.30 per unit. So that calculates for us as included in your packet based on the adjustments by PED to our units. And so it brings us to $103,230 increase. We've requested that the budget increase be approved for the line items of 11,511 salaries expense, and that would be 43,000 for a 0.5 FTE. It's not a new one, it's just to help fund the position at SNEL that was left vacant for the consumer science, and also $60,000 of that to also be approved under legal fees as indicated on your bar.
Okay. Do you have a recommendation, Joe?
I recommend approval of the bar as presented by Ms. Hogan.
You heard the recommendation. Do I hear a motion?
So move.
Motion by Mr. Molina, second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Murillo. Any questions? Call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign.
Abstain.
Please let the minutes show that four voted in favor, one abstained.
Thank you.
Thank you, Terry.
Okay, under items for next meeting, I have the board retreat let's see. So we're looking at the March 21st meeting. We have on there a special board meeting, a presentation by Mr. John Bash on an update on the superintendent search, and then the ARP application. And then when we look at our March 28th board meeting, we're looking at as an action item for the board retreat. That's all I'm showing. I'm not sure what else there is.
Anything else? Motion to adjourn. We're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.